and welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli, that's Bud Elliott, that's Danny Kanell. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where Austin says it's his first time catching live. You guys rock. Austin, you rock. Thank you for joining us live. Speaking of live, you will notice a little bit of different backgrounds. We got Bud Elliott down at CBS Sports headquarters in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. You can catch him on CBS Sports HQ, CBS Sports Network, all of that multi-platform excellence after he's done right here at youtube.com/cover3, as well as plenty of analysis on CBS Sports HQ, CBS Sports Network, and more from Danny Kanell. Danny, you are in tropical Atlanta, Georgia, the scene of Ohio State Notre Dame. Hey, can you set the tape? I mean, let me get my like HQ desk host. Set the scene, Danny. Tell us what's going on around town.
It is cold, as you mentioned. This morning I was up early, 5:30, put on the local news, and they were like, feels like 6 degrees outside. They're like, if you're attending any of the college football playoff festivities, make sure you bundle up. They even said, we would recommend you wait till afternoon when it supposedly warms up, but it is sunny out, so there's that. So I flew in to Atlanta Airport, and the plane, not really a buzz, but then when I got there, like I'm on the tram, and I looked around, and I'm like, man, there are a lot of Notre Dame fans, like 3 or 4 to 1 Notre Dame fans, and I was like, makes sense. They haven't been here in a long time. I was like, I wonder if Notre Dame's going to outnumber Ohio State fans. Then I check into my hotel. I am staying at the hotel that the Ohio State Buckeyes are staying in. So it is Buckeye Central. It is absolute mayhem. Like the lobby is like one of those open air, big old lobbies, wall to wall Buckeye fans. I got into so I've ran 2 different elevator rides. One, like when I get my bag, I'm going up to the room, and it was like right when the players got out from their dinner meetings or something like that, because it was like 7:00. So it was jam packed. Get in. There's these little kids, like you can tell, like their parents are here and they're trying to get autographs. So like little kid runs on, like just gets on. He's not even going to a room. He just wants to get autographs from the players. And so he's asking me, like, can I get your autograph? Can I get your autograph? Asking all the players. And I was like, do you know who they are? And he was like, no. So he looks up, the one guy's, what's your name? And the guy's like, Lathan. It was Lathan Ransom. Their safety was on there. Like he just thought it was cool. He was getting autographs. Then another time I came down back to like coming down this morning, come down, and I get on. It's just me and this other dude. It was Maurice Claret, who was my teammate on the pro. So he did like a double take. He was like, whoa. And I was like, I haven't seen him like 20 years. So I caught up with him. It was pretty cool. It is Buckeye Central through and through. This morning, the line for the market, like where you get coffee and stuff, was like 20, 30 minutes long. I did run into Chris, who's a frequent listener of the Cover 3 podcast. He's like, we're getting some props today. I was like, yeah, what do you like? I need some help. He goes, well, I did hear you guys talking about the Will Howard over rushing attempts. He's like, I kind of like that one. So Chris, if you're listening, he said he was going to go right up and listen, because I was like, I hope my food gets here in time or else I'm going to miss the start. He was like, oh, I'm going to listen too. Chris likes the over Will Howard rushing attempts.
I did not have Danny Kanell not using room service on my bingo card today, especially not in a cold hotel. Like,
No, you got to get the buzz. You got to get the atmosphere, talking to all the Buckeye fans. It's pretty good. The gym this morning was jam-packed, all Buckeyes. Maybe there might have been one Notre Dame. Oh, so late night, like probably 11 o'clock, I go up. That's not that late, but 11 o'clock after the football game ended, after Mark Andrews, RIP Mark Andrews, after he had his drops and fumble, I get on, and there's this sweet little old couple, and I noticed they're wearing Notre Dame gear. I was like, man, did you guys book the wrong hotel? And they were like, tell us about it. They like, no one told us. So like, you'd think they give us a discount or something. But yeah, they were pretty sweet.
Is it like all the rooms face in and overlook sort of like that open interior?
Yeah, with elevators you can see going up and down. Yeah. I feel bad for the players because they're like trying to hang out with their family. I vividly remember, like, that's Bud when you do room service, is like when you don't want to see anybody. They can't go anywhere without getting somebody ask them or good luck or just like they want to lay low. It's impossible.
Yeah, you've Danny wants the vibes. That's what I respect. Like, I'm going to try to like immerse myself in this. Plus I've got, like podcasts, radio, like you're gonna be holed up already as it is. You got to get out while you can. All right, Chris We will be having a full last-minute props and thoughts breakdown coming up in a little bit. Also, just sort of just last call before we come to you live at the conclusion of the game tonight, again, with our instant reaction. But one of the things that happens every single time at our national championship, at least since the college football playoff was created 10 years ago, is that all of the stakeholders, the decision makers, that this is a chance for them all to get together. Then they always have an annual meeting. And that annual meeting was yesterday. Now, a couple different things that we can peel off from this, but the headline is no news. But whether it's from Executive Director Rich Clark, who you might know is sort of in the Bill Hancock role as the one who oversees the board of managers, the board of directors, all the conference commissioners, or whether it is some of the comments from the conference commissioners themselves. They did not make any decisions for changes for the 2025 college football playoff season. They did not rule out any changes for the 2025 college football playoff season. So, reminder, if you're going to make a tweak before 2026, it has to be unanimous. They need to have all of the decision makers on the same side, all agreeing on it. However, it does seem like we are getting some interesting comments from those inside in terms of being willing to address the seeding and the ranking. Also, maybe not for next year. We're starting to get maybe some more conversations about on-campus games, and then much, much more. Bud, what did you end up taking away from what we're hearing coming out of some of those meetings?
I just don't know what leverage that the SEC and Big Ten are willing to give up to get like the Mountain West or the MAC to vote for changes for the 2025-2026 playoff. Like, I mean, clearly, not clearly. In my opinion, I think most of our opinions, auto bids are okay. Auto buys a little bit less so. It did make the playoff a little wonky. I mean, I still enjoyed it. We still had a lot of really good games in the playoff, but I would probably like to see auto buys go away or at least changed a little bit and probably alter the seating stuff. But for this specific year, we have to have unanimous voting. And I just don't know, like, what's the carrot that you're going to dangle to get some of these smaller conferences to vote in favor of that? Is it some nebulous promise that you probably can't be held to? Right? Yeah.
Don't you think that's it, Bud? Like, wait till you see what we're going to do. Like, you think you had it rough. Like, we could really make it rough on you, I guess.
So it's more stick than carrot.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. With the 2026 and beyond, like the 2026 to 2032 does not require unanimous. And if the people who've got the power believe they've got the votes to force through whatever they want, whether it is a 3-3-2-2-1-1 hike or whether it is an expansion or SEC and Big Ten automatically guaranteed buys for the champions. And there's lots of different ways that they could play with the format. To me, that's what the negotiations are, is like, you can play nice now, but we will then have to get our way a little bit later. Greg Sankey Greg Sankey had a vengeful tone when he said, I will not forget about those who pushed back, because we should have had the college football playoff before the 2024 season. It was voted down by the Alliance, that voting block that was asking for a 12-month holistic review of the sport. And, maybe the Pac-12 is still together. If that doesn't happen, Florida State most certainly makes the college football playoff after going 13-0 and being ACC champions. There's a lot of revisionist history there, but I do think that the fact that Greg Sankey, mentioned that he remembered those who stood in their way and caused all the headaches when they thought they had the job done, leads me to believe that that's at least a threat, even if it's not explicitly mentioned. It is an implicit threat that, like, we do take notes, we do keep receipts from what happens with these negotiations.
So, question for you: like, I was out at the Battle 7-on-7 all day yesterday, so I really didn't see some of the quotes. We think there's a chance that the bowl games seed to home games starting in 26. Like, I missed kind of the quotes in that, or do we think that's more
Rich,
like
Executive Director Rich Clark? This is one thing that a lot of people are asking him about, and he said, we thought we are certainly going to discuss it. We thought that the on-campus games made for an incredible experience, and the College Football Playoff Invitational is a television show, and the television show looked awesome
Mm-hmm.
with the on-campus games. Now, you're right that if you're going to give more on-campus games, you're going to take away from bowl games that are really counting on this. But I do think that does appear to be some momentum towards increasing the on-campus presence. I would bet that does not happen for 25, but it does at least sound like at the very top of the decision-making chain, they are entertaining it for 26.
Okay.
And I think we should continue pushing for it for 26. Because I don't think it'll happen for 25. I don't think there's really going to be any major changes to the playoff next year because, like you said, there needs to be, unanimous consent to do anything. And I don't think you're going to get it because there's always going to be a conflict of interest for somebody. But I do think that trending towards, as Bud mentioned, getting rid of the auto buys, and then if you can do it to where there are more home games, what you can also do is what the NFL does. You can reseed. So that way, the number 1 seed will get to host the quote unquote worst team remaining in the second round at home, because without the bowl tie-ins and without having to do that kind of travel stuff and have everything kind of, aligned for that, it gives you more freedom to do that. Because it's like, if you're the 12th seed in the playoff, you're Clemson fan, we're playing Texas this week. If we win next week, we're going to Oregon. So it's like it allows a fan base to kind of plan ahead if they want to do that. So it alleviates some of the problems that currently doing it would give you. So I do think that I think fans and media should kind of pressure them to do that. We should keep talking about it until they finally do it.
You know what else I think they're starting to realize? Like, if you have to go, so if we increase those, like in theory, you would lose some of those bowl games. They're realizing it doesn't really matter who's playing those bowl games, so they'll just put other teams in the bowls, and people will still watch.
Yeah,
I think that's ESPN's probably fired up. They're like, sweet, you guys want to do on home campus? Those will rate off the charts. We'll get more inventory, and we'll still keep all the bowls we have in. So what if the team is 7-5 or 6-6 or even 5-7? We'll fill them, and people will watch. We'll fill those slots.
The ratings for the bowls this year have been fine.
Yeah. Which is it. I think it speaks to what we talked about. Like, people are home a lot during December, and you can only talk to your family so much. So they're going to put it on, even if you like them. It's what if we, instead of reseeding, what if the number 1 seed got to pick?
I'd love that too.
That's TV drama, man.
I know.
That's what we should do.
Listen, can we get there?
That's how much content we get. Why did Oregon choose them?
We have all the head coaches in a room, right? And then, say the number 1 seed this year, it's Oregon, and they're all standing there, and Dan Lanning has to walk up and down the line of coaches, and he just sits there and looks him in the eyes, and then he stops and says, "I choose you."
No, that's 2035 vision. Okay, all right.
Does any sport in the world do that?
No.
Choosing? No.
WWE. Yeah. So we can have tests. We can have tests.
It works for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think while I completely agree with the drama factor in the television product, that does feel like we're speed running to the end of college football. That needs
we already are.
Needs to be our last thing that we've got.
Jump on this thing, man.
All right. One last sort of note just on the college football playoff side of this, a few more notes, and then our full Ohio State props and thoughts. Is there anything else that's not being discussed that you would want? Because Tom, you mentioned that we would want to push. I know Rich Clark, the executive director of the college football playoffs, is a big fan of the podcast. So is there any other message that we would want to send to him and the other decision makers in the room?
No.
I hope they are thinking ahead on the 14. I mean, I'm sure they are, but are there things that we think, hey, the problems are probably eradicated going from 12 to 14, but the 14 will have new problems or new, not problems, just issues that maybe, could have been foreseen had we really thought about it. And if so, what are they? Right. We ran through the 14 exercise on this show, and it actually worked out pretty nice. Do we think it's just going to be just like Big Ten, SEC automatic as the 2 buys in the 14? Or it's just how are they going to stack those rules to favor those 2 leagues? I mean, they have favored nation status for sure, but is it going to be just so nakedly, hey, they get the first 2 no matter what? Or how are they going to do that?
I don't know. I'll tell you what I would want. So Rich Clark said he's had some discussion with the NFL and that Roger Goodell has agreed to talk about the scheduling. reporting as of this morning. I saw, our friend Brett McMurphy, the Action Network. He's talking about some of the changing dates of like, we're going to move from Dallas to Tampa for one of these future title games. And guys, I was looking at the dates here. We're going to have title games on January 24th. We're going to have title games on January 25th. I mean, like, and this is like, I don't think
Can we move this stuff up.
I don't think that it's even, you're talking to, if you're going to talk to the NFL about trying to, tweak what's going to happen around those like semifinals, so you don't have to play them on a Thursday and a Friday night. Why don't you just try to like move all of this up and really start to think about the calendar? And if we're going to look at the transfer portal calendar, let's look at the college football playoff calendar as well, because that we are sitting here on the Monday morning of our national championship game, and all anybody's talking about is Mark Andrews. It's just there is some, like, if we're going to acknowledge,
I think there are other things people are talking about today.
Should the Eagles have been
Andrews,
allowed in the playoffs with how Jalen hurt? Yeah,
Tom, fair. But I think that it is something where it is just dragging so far. If you're going to be afraid of the NFL with scheduling your semifinal games on a Thursday and Friday night, why are you then inviting just getting swallowed up by the NFL playoffs? Because the deeper that you go into this, I think that the sporting public as a whole is finding it harder to keep that motor going for college football when the big monster is just out there roaring with the countdown to the Super Bowl.
I will say, just like behind the scenes stuff here at home, like Lynn was asking me, she's like, so you've probably got a lot of HQ stuff today. I was like, no, not really. She's like, why not? It's just because they're talking NFL playoffs.
It's the economy of time. There's only but so many blocks in an hour.
I did NBA highlights this morning, so.
No way. You tell me Zach and Brandon brought you on and you were just out there giving them
I was there waiting like through 2 NBA segments. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's Magic getting healthy, like playoff, deep playoff run coming next year.
Coming next year. There you go.
Yeah.
So that would be my plea is if we're looking at the calendar for everything else, when I was seeing those early national title game dates, we're pushing this thing to January 24th, January 25th. That doesn't feel like it's got as much momentum, roar as much as it is just sort of like dragging itself to the finish line. I know it doesn't feel like that if you're an Ohio State fan. I know it doesn't feel like that if you're a Notre Dame fan. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing that. But just that's the general sense that I'm getting.
Would you have to start the season earlier though?
Or come about the next part, maybe start to rethink that conference championship game weekend.
Or what would you guys think about playing kickoff week? I think the networks would absolutely love this. Like, we have, games every single night in August because nobody wants to play day games in August, except with the exception of like some of the Big Ten teams. So in the more temperate climates, maybe you have like kickoff week where like the Big Ten goes, during the daytime for kickoff, and then like the SEC and ACC and all the warm places, that they go nighttime. It does suck as a fan to have to travel like on a Wednesday to a game, but it could be a cool thing. I think it would draw a lot of attention to the sport because you're not competing against NFL, you're competing against NFL, preseason games.
And it would help
for you. Yeah.
What do you think the temperature is in Chicago in August during the day?
It's hot.
65?
I will say I got the worst sunburn of my life in Chicago, actually, because I was like, whatever, I'm a Florida boy, like this, like no cloud cover. It was
not as hot. See, Tom
in the 90s.
You can play a noon game in Chicago.
It's in the
and
90s.
It's in the 90s, but it feels like 80.
Daddy, come on, man.
Humid. Come on.
Tell him. Yeah, that's different.
I have been in Florida in the summer, and I have been in Chicago in the summer, and it's different in Florida. But 95 is 95, no matter where the hell you are.
All right, let's trade. Tom's gonna do my yard work. I'll do Tom's yard work one day in the summer. We'll live stream it.
Dude, there's humidity here too. I don't know what.
There is another weekend in there, and as much as I hate it, I do think, people have been trashing it. I love the fact that Army and Navy get the treatment they do, but that would be the weekend to kind of circle potentially as putting games on that weekend. And like I love the game, and I don't necessarily, I know it's a standalone. But they might have issues because of the American. I mean, this year, I think it's significantly impacted the American Championship game. Because Army had to play that week before, and I think they were dragging into that game a little bit. So like that's a weekend you could look at, and I think there's still a way you could respect it and pay your tributes to it, but then allow other games. Like there's a week there But to see the other thing is player safety. They like having the time off to get players healthy. So I think we're stuck with this for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Coming up on the other side, coming out of some of these decision makers, a very interesting look at the conference championship game from one power conference commissioner. Steve Sarkisian, the NFL was calling. What did he say? And billable hours. I am so happy our in-house attorney can help break this down, because a transfer from the Big Ten to the ACC could trigger a legal battle. We'll get into all that and more next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. If you are watching along on youtube.com/cover3, we've got between now and April. We're just going to give you those twinkly pianos as much as possible, because it actually lowers your blood pressure to hear it. It's incredible. But doctors everywhere have actually prescribed it. So Wisconsin and the Big Ten issued statements over the weekend with some issues about how Miami has handled the expected transfer of defensive back Xavier Lucas, and it's potentially going to be a legal problem because of Lucas's NIL contracts with Wisconsin. It was, according to reports, a, quote, binding 2-year NIL agreement that with the collective, which is different from the university, and that in transferring to Miami, it brings about questions of tampering. It brings about questions of whether or not he fulfilled his side of the contracts. Bud, I know that you were helping do a little bit of an explainer on CBS Sports HQ earlier this morning. Can you help us here on the Cover 3 podcast understand maybe a little bit about the specifics? But I think my bigger question is so what does this mean for the future of these transfers and NIL and the collectives, and whether this could set any kind of precedent for that would be good for schools, good for players, or bad for everybody involved?
Yeah, let's reel off a couple tenths here. So Lucas, really good player, nice prospect out of South Florida. Miami wanted him pretty bad. First time around, he signs with Wisconsin, decides he wants to transfer back to somewhere. Obviously, we know Miami. Now he's a guy a lot of schools we're going to want, because the guy has some real ability. Physically, he's pretty freaky. He said he wanted to put his name in the transfer portal. Wisconsin did not enter his name into the transfer portal. So the question kind of becomes why, right? They really haven't said, at least not from what I've read, why they did not enter him in. I believe you are required to enter the athlete in if the athlete requests so and fulfills requirements. And one of those requirements is this little educational module. And I talked to a buddy of mine in compliance. He's like, yeah, if we're cool with the kid, we usually send him the link to the educational module. But if the kid is kind of a jerk, then sometimes we just Google it, bro. So there is some chance that maybe he did not fulfill all the requirements. I don't know that. I asked my buddy in compliance, what's a reason why maybe sometimes you're delayed getting into the portal? And he gave me that. So maybe there's some kind of non-requirement fulfilled by Lucas here as to why Wisconsin did not enter him in. Or maybe Wisconsin's no, we're not going to do it because you signed a rev share agreement with us, and you also signed, and this should not impact it really, but you also signed with our collective there at Wisconsin. So this brings up a couple questions, right? Number one, so he transferred to Miami without entering the transfer portal, which is legal. You can transfer without going to the portal. The portal is more like the formalized process. Hey, I'm entering my name in the portal. Everybody knows that I am intending to transfer. You can either contact me, or if I have the do not contact tag, then you don't have to. Then I don't want anybody to contact me, which means I already know where I'm going. But there's no rule that says you can't just unenroll from Wisconsin and enroll at Miami. Mm-hmm. However, there can be some contractual, hangups, right? Which in this case, Lucas might have. So to me, there's kind of two questions. One, can Wisconsin sue and prevent him from playing, which I doubt? Two, can Wisconsin sue him and prevent him from earning money from Miami? Or can they recoup any kind of money that Miami or outside sources at Miami want to pay him? And then the third question, obviously, Wisconsin has alleged that Miami's tampering, which that's the whole thing. You go into the portal so that you are allowed to have conversations with other teams. Other teams are not supposed to talk to you if you are not in the portal. So I am curious as to what actual evidence Wisconsin has of this. It'd be pretty sloppy if you're like a coach texting a kid who's not in the portal. That's just like do the whole FaceTime thing where you add in another guy like third party or get a burner or anything else. RIP the Harbaugh video we shot that never saw the light of day. But ultimately, I'm curious to see those questions. Like, can Wisconsin block him from playing? And how binding is this agreement that he signed with Wisconsin? Now, his attorney, Darren Heitner, is saying it's not binding at all because the House settlement has not even been enacted yet, right? Which is kind of interesting. We'll see if that argument holds up. But this is looking a lot like non-compete on a non-employee, which we've said a million times on the show is generally where the NCAA gets slapped. You're like, hey, you can't have your cake, you need it too. So like, when I was on HQ today with Brandon, he was like, eventually like something's going to happen where these guys are just going to be employees. They're going to be tired of dealing with the headache. And like, maybe this is the headache that they just don't want to deal with anymore. But it's going to be interesting to see how this is fought out. Will it open like the floodgates for other transfers? Like not using the portal? I don't really think so. I think the portal is probably a good thing for the process, but also we will get some interesting answers as to how binding some of these revenue share agreements with the schools are.
Did you think it was interesting that the Big Ten statement called out the ACC?
Yes. So the most
like they're not in an alliance anymore.
I just thought they were trying to put some pressure on the ACC to maybe enforce some of this.
1,000%.
And I'm not as sure as you, Bud. Do you think coaches are that careful still? I just think with nobody getting caught, I wouldn't be surprised if they do have some receipts.
No, I mean, I think if you're Wisconsin, like Wisconsin's alleging, like, I mean, they're pretty out, like they're on Front Street with this. So I think Wisconsin probably has something.
They're pretty loudly saying tampering without saying the word tampering.
Right.
Some of these schools have social media monitoring stuff where I think they can see, and I don't know if Wisconsin does, but like I talked to a buddy, he's like, yeah, we can see like all the kids' social media activity. It's like the DMs,
follow, the unfollow, like when, like the timing of all that stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know if, again, I don't know. I was running my head like, how would they get this? I doubt they have his like cell phone records, but maybe like some kind of social media stuff.
This is like the FBI.
Yeah, seriously.
For a freshman defensive back?
I know, that's what I'm saying. Just that seems odd, but like the most interesting part of this story to me is just that this is the first time in this entire kind of player empowerment era, whatever the hell we want to call it, that I do feel like a league and a school is truly pushing back again. Like we saw this before the transfer portal became a thing, where schools would be like kind of, like we're going to deny it. And then everybody would go on Twitter and be like, that's not fair. And then the school would be like, all right, we'll let them go. But this is the first time since all this stuff became like legit that you have seen a conference in a school just like put out statements saying, no, this is BS.
I actually, and I know it's easy for people to say, well, you're a Florida State guy. I actually hope that they do win this side, or that Wisconsin could actually show something enforceable, because then we could get some form of continuity. But I have very little confidence that they will be able to enforce this.
Enforce which part? Like the you can't play part, or you can't earn part? Because I think that's really distinct.
You do. So he can play. Which part do you think is more enforceable?
I think the money part is far more enforceable.
So you think it's all right. So if he signed a 2-year rev share agreement with Wisconsin, he has finished 1 year, then what is the financial penalty that he must incur to be able to like play for the University of Miami in 2025?
Wait, when did he sign the agreement?
I
thought it was 2 years starting now.
Yeah, he signed it December 3rd because you just were allowed to start doing these.
You weren't signing rev share agreements a year ago because the House wasn't done.
Right. So this is like he has not even started.
Right. It's a brand new deal, just inked.
I do think they're distinct. Yeah. Like, I don't know if he willingly signed this. I mean, he obviously has representation. I don't know if he had representation at the time. I assume he does. I don't know that he has a real leg to stand on. That's probably why they're trying to attack that this was not a legal agreement, because House is not finalized yet.
So let's say if it is a legal agreement, he would have to buy his way out of the deal.
Possibly.
Basically, yeah.
Or Miami would have to buy it out.
I will say
which is good.
right.
See, I think that should happen. Then it's like, because we all get compared to coaches all the time. Like, hey, coaches can move around. Well, guess what happens if they want to move around? You got to buy them out.
Yeah, you got to buy.
Did you guys look at this like the agreement some of these Big Ten schools are signing?
No.
It's
enlighten me.
It's in. Yeah, I saw it on Twitter this morning. I apologize for not giving credit here for who had it, but I was scrolling through it pretty fast. It's fairly one-sided. Like they can decide to like terminate for any reason or increase or decrease your pay for basically at their discretion. So as long as you play well and you keep balling, it's awesome. But there's not a whole lot of downside risk protection for the athlete, at least not in the Form 1. I don't know which one Lucas signed. I assume, again, if he has representation, he probably put some different stuff in there. But
so it's like a scholarship.
It was interesting.
It's just like a scholarship. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
But one of the more like completely not at the heart of this, but just interesting aspects of this to me, spinning it forward, is now that the Big Ten as a conference is actually involved. Like I know that Florida State never, despite any possible reports, ever raised a storm about possibly leaving the ACC. You know, that was never happening.
No way.
And like Clemson and Miami and these schools, they've never had any kind of interest in getting out of the ACC and maybe going to a new conference like the Big Ten. If you're Miami, do you really want to piss the Big Ten off over this that much? Because a year or two from now, when maybe some things legally happen that allow you to get out of something and you're looking for a home, I don't know.
Okay, I hear you, but to me, that sounds like a Mario Cristobal. Like, well, what does that have to do with me?
Yeah, no, I'm saying if you're Miami, the school. If I'm Mario, give me the damn player. I don't care.
Mario's trying to win now.
And this is when our alignment is going to be tested. Like, who's calling the shots? Is there somebody around there who's going to play nice and play politics in order to make sure that they don't burn any bridges for the future? I don't know if that person has more power than Mario Cristobal trying to win these championships. So we'll see about that along the way. I wonder if the Big Ten, I did see this floated. I wonder if the Big Ten is getting involved so aggressively because the Big Ten is trying to orchestrate the language and be a source for its member schools. And they don't want this document, this contract that they have helped put together for all of the Big Ten schools to all of a sudden look like it is not enforceable. So the Big Ten, to me, as I read this, their involvement is probably as much trying to protect their own process as anything else, just so that it doesn't seem like, then their member schools are gonna be like, well, what the heck? You're giving us all this framework. You're saying you're helping us out with this, and it can't hold up whatsoever. So that's where the Big Ten maybe getting chesty is as much trying to preserve the future of whatever they have with their rev share agreements. That sound right?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. We'll obviously continue to monitor this all through the evolution of the House settlement and the like. One last thing, Danny, you got to see Jim Phillips yet? Your guy.
Not yet, but I'm going to go look. Because, man, this is a good day for the ACC getting half a championship if Notre Dame pulls this thing off. I mean,
one last thing on this, and this is not specific to the Big Ten, but we did talk about, like, how do you make an end run around some of the Title IX stuff, right? Which, obviously, you guys saw the Title IX ruling with NIL.
Yeah.
I think that's probably, like, a non-starter if we even have a Department of Education in a month. But even if we do, I kind of doubt that they will enforce that, although we'll have lawsuits coming over. But a long time ago, we did talk about, like, how do you get around some of this stuff to where you pay the athletes who actually earn money for the school, like real rev share. And a lot of the thing was they either work for the playoff or they work for the conferences. Mm-hmm. They don't work for the educational institutions. I think a first step would be having a pretty conference-wide kind of standard contract that everybody signs up that looks real similar. Like, it's just kind of, we're starting to lay the groundwork there. And again, not Big Ten specific, but if you wanted to run it to where, like, you're an employee of the Big Ten or you're an employee of the SEC, not an employee of Wisconsin, that's kind of how it would look, I think, to start.
Okay, we are going to
Tom's point, like, why they're fighting this so hard.
Right.
I think that's part of it too.
Yeah. One last note before we dive into Ohio State, Notre Dame, like all the props, all the thoughts, and so much more. So there is this time of year, and when you're meeting in the hotel rooms and you're just talking about stuff, it's very much no bad ideas season. And one of the no bad ideas that ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips has brought up is the idea that maybe they would rethink the conference championship as it pertains to the college football playoff and automatic qualifiers. He suggested that maybe, especially in one with automatic bids for conferences, that the regular season champion would get an automatic bid. They would be declared the regular season champion. Then that conference championship Saturday would instead, in the ACC's case, have the number 2 and the number 3 team in a play-in game to the college football playoff. DK, what do you make of sort of this outside the box thinking by Jim Phillips, PhD, MD?
I like it that he is thinking outside the box, right? I think he's always been one that's kind of sat in the rear view, in the background and kind of let things come to him. I like that he's being proactive. Clearly, this is a very direct response to Rhett Lashley when he was making the rounds before the ACC championship game, being like, wait a second, if we lose this game, you're telling me we could be out? Why would we even play in this game? And through, 3/4 of that game, it looked like for a minute that SMU might have been left out, and they fought their way back and made it close, so it wasn't an issue. There's a couple things I have, have an issue with. One, is it your best team all the time, especially when you don't play everybody? If it was 9 conference games the ACC played instead of 8, I think you can make a stronger case for that. I do think it helps reward the regular season, so that's good. But like I said, I don't know. I think it might be trying to do too much. What about the other proposal he had, where having 2 weekends at the end where you have the top 4 teams play, and then you have the championship? There's a lot going on. Of those 2, I don't hate the regular season gets a bye, but I think there has to be some tweaking to ensure it's your strongest, best team.
No bad ideas, huh?
Big Ten, yeah.
Sure?
So if I would bite on the semifinals then champion unless you expand the conference schedule, because in 2023 we all looked at this massive ACC and we're like, wow, Louisville got a pretty nice draw, and sure enough, Louisville made it to the ACC championship game. This year we looked at all the conference schedules. We said, wow, SMU got a pretty nice draw, and SMU made it to the conference championship game. Now SMU played well in the conference championship game, but I do think that the imbalanced nature of the schedules makes it so that if we are declaring a regular season champion, you might just be declaring who got the best draw on the schedule rotation, because the league is so daggum big that you can't get a fair set of getting to play all the competitive teams.
Play 10 conference games.
I'm all
not only does it guarantee that you'll play more of the other schools, but it also will help separate teams as far as the record. You won't need as many tiebreakers the more games that you play. As for the idea of the first place team getting the bye and then the conference championship being played between the second and third place team, that's just a great way to say we're never going to get 3 teams in the field.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's
Right.
You are killing your chance to do so.
Yeah.
So I think from that perspective, very dumb idea. Not even the common sense of we're calling it our championship game when our champion's not even in the game. As far as the other one, the top 4 teams getting in, we were just talking in the show about how the season's going too long and about how there's so many games. So let's add more games for these teams. So that way, when our champion does get to the playoff, it's played 2 more games than everybody else. So that way, maybe our 3rd string quarterback and our backup tackles are all playing on the depth chart. No, man, either get rid of conference championships or just change the format of the playoff. These ideas suck. Jim, no bad ideas. These are not good ideas, though.
Some bad ideas season, says Tom Fornelli. All right. We'll get into the actual game itself. So coming up on the other side, last chance. The board is open. Time to fire on all the props and all the locks and all the thoughts. Counting it down to Monday night's championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame and more.
Next.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
If we are going to have a mega betting preview, then that we've got to at least get a little bit of help. Mackenzie Brooks in the house from Atlanta. You
Yes.
landed?
Boots on ground in Buckhead. Headed over to the stadium soon.
Okay. Frigid? Oh, wait, do we have
Freezing.
furs?
Yeah, we got. Look at this. Look at this good piece.
Oh, okay. So we're going to channel
I
Mob
have
Wife
that
again?
same scarf.
Yeah, I'm in Buckhead. I have to dial it in here.
Let's go.
So Buckhead is mob wife. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at the Big Ten championship game, it was Jordan and Mackenzie were both furred out in Indianapolis. So
This is
We
true.
had that was like our game. This we had to show out. I'm a little more chill for my outfit tonight.
I think it's colder here than it was that weekend.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
It was
This
like
is like
11.
insane.
yeah, and TikTok's back, so we're good. Kansas can be set to
Thank
survive.
God, guys.
All right,
Those were, I will say, the most productive 12 hours of my entire life, probably.
red books. Yeah, Tom's got a little 4 degrees in there. Oh,
But it's sunny.
It's sunny. It's pretty. It's
Mm-hmm.
just terrifying outside.
it's just so cold. All right, let's start. Mackenzie, let's start with sort of the basic stuff. Then we'll break it on down into the more exotics all the way down. Now, we didn't get a chance to hear from you in the Locks pod. What's your general sort of like surface level reads on this game, and how are you attacking it from the betting perspective?
As far as surface level reads, like I think about Ohio State versus Texas, and I feel like I was on here maybe earlier this week. I'm getting all my days mixed up, but I mean, I would think Notre Dame can keep it closer than Texas did because of the reasons Texas lost being reasons that Notre Dame doesn't necessarily have as much. Like you have Quinn Ewers, who just isn't exactly a mobile, athletic quarterback. Riley Leonard is willing to move a little bit more. You know, they have better red zone conversion rate, I'd say, than Texas, and they're not as prone as turning the ball over. And those are all the things that, you know, gave Ohio State that game versus Texas. So I would think they can cover. I'm hesitant because as somebody going to the game, like I want it to be close and fun, obviously, but the version of Notre Dame staying in this game is so slow and methodical. It's like, I don't know if I want to watch that either. As far as a bet, I think the first half under instead of Notre Dame first half spread would be the play, because I think if it is an Ohio State first half blowout, it'd be like 21-0 and you're still hitting that under. Or if Notre Dame does keep it close, it's because you're hitting that first half under too. So I think I've been like debating both all week because the first half unders are hitting at such a high rate in the playoffs. I'm almost scared, like, can it actually keep up? But I feel like both storylines get you to the under here in the first half.
I like that a lot. Obviously, you know, I've been on the first half under train. Would you jump in would you do the full treasure map of first half under, then wait for the live and then go second half live over?
Yeah, that's what I did at the Orange Bowl, boots on ground as well. First half under, live bet second half over. Maybe we also treasure map in Ohio State third quarter spread. Are you playing that this week, Chip?
Yeah, 100%. Dance with the date that brought you. I mean,
Chip, are you feeding your children today?
No, and I am playing it spread. There was a big debate on whether I got into the three-way markets, but the three-way markets are left to 1-800-GAMBLR or whatever the number is.
I have a quick, this is again, like almost a question that just feels like you should be betting it. Chris Mitchell for Notre Dame. From my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like outside of like Bo Collins, quote unquote, leads them in touchdowns with 3. And then like everybody else is on the same playing field. So the fact that anybody would have a rationally higher odds to score a touchdown than the next guy feels a little bizarre to me. And Chris Mitchell opened at 19-1. And I was like, everybody should be plus 800 to plus 900. And then he went down to plus 850, which checked out. Now he's back to 24-1. And I'm like, what's going on there? Like, is that...
I mean, he hasn't caught a touchdown since October 26th.
I know, but like he plays 30 to 35 snaps a game, and like he's gonna have to be up there. And if you're going to keep up with this team,
Especially
if you're playing
if Collins
behind,
doesn't go.
exactly.
Like if Collins is like real limited, then that makes a lot of sense. Kenz, I want to run this by you. You can actually flip Mitchell in here for this if you want, but I got a little 400-1 shot. Like just kind of, I've already bet most of the props I want to bet, but this is something just kind of little pizza money. Eli Raritan, first touchdown scorer of the game. Notre Dame offensive drive, first drive result, touchdown. Notre Dame plus 2.5 first quarter. It's plus 400. Or sorry, 400-1.
Yeah.
Wow. Notre Dame first drive of the game, touchdown.
Touchdown. You could actually flip Mitchell in there too. Pretty simple.
Yeah,
I won't pay
good.
400-1, but like And
Listen,
then
I mean, they eat
so
the
FanDuel
clock.
will let you go first quarter spread on that kind of stuff, but they don't let you do like first half money line. So you kind of got to play around with what the logic will allow you to do, and then operate from there.
Would you do? Is your Eli touchdown anytime?
No, it was first because I feel like it
First.
correlates well with the first drive.
So you're saying Notre Dame is going to
So you're saying Notre Dame has a chance? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
I, mean,
Notre Dame.
I bet Ohio State for the game. I'm trying to think like, okay, what's the stuff? Like, there's still some meat left on the bone potentially.
I mean, that's an early sweat. That's either dead on arrival or it's there. DK, you got your eyes on anything particular as we're getting a little bit closer to kickoff?
I told you guys the other day, I do like Riley Leonard under his rushing yardage. It's 36.5. It's kind of stayed there. Again, I think he might get sacked a couple times. That would help that. Touchdown scores, some of those for anytime touchdowns going down to try to find some value. I think Jeremiah Love or Riley Leonard plus 150 or plus 145. I just think the rushing touchdowns for them come into play in the red zone. We know what they want to do. I would take either one of those guys.
I will say I just looked it up, Kenz. Chris Mitchell has 5 red zone targets all year long. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of like a Bo Collins.
Yeah, I would say if you're looking for a long shot touchdown, I would go with G. Scott at plus 550
For any time or first?
Anytime, yeah. For first, yeah. If he's at what 2,500 for first touchdown score, not terrible.
You've been G. Scott, because what happened was you're so concerned about Ibuka and Smith that Texas just left the middle of the field wide open, and then G. Scott was able to get in there and feast. What about kicker props?
Ooh.
Not again. Chip, don't trigger me from yesterday.
No, listen, I'm telling you, Mitch Jeter over 5.5 kicking points.
Right? It's
Don't laugh. Goals. We were on Zane Gonzalez last night over 6.5 points.
Listen, this can happen.
2 nights ago.
Yeah. Listen, I would go Jaden Fielding, Ohio State kicker at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. His kicking points is at 6.5. I'd take that under. Okay. Ohio State has had some kicking woes, and they're also do a pretty good job of scoring touchdowns. Now, Ohio State's defense is excellent at forcing field goal attempts and red zone stops. Mitch Jeter has had the clutch gene. And so I think that Mitch Jeter over 5.5 kicking points would be the way that I would play that one. And for Jaden Fielding, I would go under 6.5 kicking points if you wanted to do a little kicking point parlay for tonight.
I thought we were here to talk football bets, not kickers.
Listen,
how about, I have a question. How about, I know how I feel about it. How do you feel about Will Howard interception? Has that been discussed?
I mean, if you look at their biggest games, his interception rate is much higher in those games than they are
outside of Oregon. Like he's going to throw an interception. It seems is the deal here.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah. Let's see. I think I priced that at FanDuel Sportsbook. Yeah, it's moving. If you want it, jump on it now. That was minus 130 at FanDuel Sportsbook yesterday, minus 136 as we sit here live on youtube.com/cover3.
That's a little heavy to me.
Little heavy.
That might have to be in a little 3-legger for me.
Yeah.
Just a clean little 3-legger. Yeah. Riley Leonard passing yards over. Who would dance with it? Toughest games that Riley Leonard has played, the most competitive games against the best teams, have led to a 22% increase in pass attempts. The volume goes up. He's going to have to throw it. And if you want to game script this out where Ohio State is able to establish an early lead, then you're going to have to be in there chasing it. And you don't necessarily even need the touchdowns. Maybe Ohio State's going to sit back and let them just dink and dunk 8 yards at a time. Well, man, 8-9 yards at a time, you can get yourself to 180 yards after a little bit. So if you want to game that, that is one that I did not have on Thursday. That as I was stewing over it, cooking in the lab over the weekend, Riley Leonard passing yards over right now at FanDuel Sportsbook 178.5.
Is that going down? Maybe we wait that one out.
See if people keep hammering the under and then jump on it late.
I feel like that's got to be like a public bet. Is Riley Leonard
passing yards under? Yeah. Don't wait too long. You never know which way the market's going to move on that one.
I'm going to be cooking up a little prize picks parlay here in the great state of Georgia. I think is what my option is here.
I mean, yeah, unless this, especially here in this extremely public platform, I would not would not admit to any other behavior other than what's very legal there. In State-Notre.
Good call, Kip.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So, Tom, Danny, Bud, any other last minute props or last minute thoughts?
I still like the under for the game. As far as the spread, I would rather bet an Ohio State alt line than the actual spread. Whether I think Notre Dame or Ohio State are going to cover, regardless, I just think that if there's going to be a blowout tonight, it'll be Ohio State doing it, not the other way around. So if you're betting the spread at all, that's the way I would lean, like Ohio State by 2 touchdowns or more.
DK?
I like that too, because you're hedging happiness, as Kenz likes to say a lot of times. I want to see a good game. So if it's sideways, at least you'll win some money if it does go that direction.
Oh, the thrill of watching Jack Sawyer return that fumble last week for me was just outstanding, because that clipped so many ladders for ladder rungs for me as he hit that.
We bet the under at the Big Ten championship that we watched in person. That was like literally the worst decision I've ever made in my life. Like rooting for an under in person. I was like, do I hate myself? And it didn't even hit.
It's about discipline.
Think with Tom, I'm on the under too. I do think you have 2 ways to win, and one of them's with the good game. But I do think if it does get sideways, I don't think it's going to be like such a massive blowout where Ohio State's like covering the number by themselves. Could be wrong. I just feel like Notre Dame's defense will be better at that. And I think they're going to try to slow the pace down the majority of the game. So you might have that Ohio State big win by 3 touchdowns, but I still think you'd be all right on the under.
So
Chip, your Ohio State first half, Riley Leonard over passing yards is plus 280.
Ohio State first half. Wait, what?
Riley Leonard passing yards over is plus 280.
What a bizarre 2-leg parlay.
Oh,
think about it.
Yeah.
Take Ohio State in the first half and Riley Leonard full. Oh, it's a treasure. Thank you, matey. This is what I need to find me booty.
Chip was just very confused because he wasn't expecting Bud to come up with a stupid treasure map parlay that has almost no chance of winning. He's like, that's my department.
Hey,
do we have first half alts? Because actually, if we had first half alts, that'd be interesting. Because there's actually, if they're up huge, there's like a real strong correlation there.
So I was.
Although I guess they could be up huge because they knocked Leonard out of the game.
In the college football playoff era, there is an example of
about that, Bud.
There is an example of an underdog of 5 or more points coming in and absolutely spanking the opponent. Does anyone know which one it was?
Wait, college football playoff or
in the college football playoff era, there is a national championship game where an underdog of
Clemson, Bama.
5 points or more came in
San Francisco or Santa Clara.
Yep.
Right.
Notre Dame, because I've talked about this game so much that I now am entertaining all possibilities. Like that's how deep in this I am. Like the last straw I needed was how does Notre Dame win big? And it is that Ohio State does what Alabama did in 2018. Because for those who don't remember, that 2018 Alabama team was 14-0 and had mashed absolutely everybody. And they walked into Santa Clara and they pooped their pants. And they had pooped their pants so bad that Nick Saban tried a desperation fake field goal that was absolutely stuffed out. And everything went sideways. Final score, Clemson, the 6.5-point underdog, 44. Alabama 16. So if there is a Notre Dame runaway win, it would be filed along there with that Clemson Bama game with I understand that on paper one team was way better, but they just did not show up. That would be a Buckeyes lose it type game, I think. I
could be into that. Be fun to watch.
So McElroy told I think it was McElroy who said this. He was talking to was it Tua in that game?
Yeah, Tua is yes.
And Tua and the Bama staff said Venables ran a couple coverage concepts out of looks that game that they had literally not shown at all that year, which is interesting. When we talk about 16-game season, what do you hold back? You hold back players from a health and usage standpoint, but you also hold back some plays. Ohio State deciding they're all of a sudden going to be a gap run scheme as opposed to running zone. Surprise, Tennessee. Cool. That's one. But if you watch the Jim Knowles press conference when he talks about the goal line stand,
where he goes, boom, boom, that one.
Well, no. So he's kind of going play by play. So he talks about downs hitting the pitch, And then it's the third down play he discusses, which is the incompletion in the corner of the end zone. He's like, yeah, we haven't run this coverage all year. Just, kind of, I was like, look at that. So, yeah, it's something they held back in that game. Little trap stuff. So,
well, and it's so funny because Al Golden is already laying it. He was asked about at the media day. He said, okay, like you guys are a heavy man-to-man team. This is kind of, what y'all do. He gives this long spiel. He's like, look, we're not going to change who we are. This is like what's gotten us here. But I would 100% entertain the idea that he's lying and that they've got like a bunch of extra little wrinkles and ways that they can try to, coax Will Howard into being a little flustered and throwing an interception and sort of flipping this game, because Notre Dame is 137 points off turnovers in 15 games this season.
Because they mix it up.
Second place is Tulane with 107 points off turnovers in 14 games. I mean, this is it's what they do. So I could see there if when you're, again, you can see Ohio State winning big, Ohio State winning small, Notre Dame winning small. My Notre Dame wins big thought is that it probably starts with Al Golden. It probably starts with that defense and trying to create some frustrations for the Ohio State quarterback.
When it comes to coverages, because I do feel like it gets kind of lost in just the talk about this game as we've been going over it for 10 days. Like you talk about Notre Dame's heavy man coverage, and they are, but they still only play it 57% of the time. Right. 43% of the time they're in a zone. It's like, what are the Sharps, Chip? What are they?
They are wrong 40% of the time, and that is a Steph Curry 3-point attempt. Are you comfortable with the Steph Curry 3-point attempt? Then don't feel bad stepping in front of the Sharps.
Exactly. And Notre Dame is in zone 40% of the time. So it's not like they don't know how to do it, or if they suddenly do it 49% or 50% of the time, it's some wild breakaway from their typical game plan.
All right. Okay, Danny, Mackenzie, y'all enjoy the game in Atlanta. Y'all be well. For those of you watching at home, join us for the Instant Reaction Podcast, youtube.com/cover3. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.